Connection Gateway podcast, and we're continuing our discussion with Johnsie Adams, my friend, my colleague, who is telling us some amazing stories about her life, and that's why I invited her in the studios to show us behind the veil of what life can be like, not just living in poverty, but living in poverty that's fueled by drug addiction in a home. And we're just going to pick up where we left off, Johnsie. When I said something earlier about your relationship with your mother, I could see in the studio a response that was kind of odd, but I didn't want to push it till we talked about it. And we talked about it a little bit off air. Tell us, if you will, as much as you're willing, the story about you at 14 where you were assaulted, and because of the drugs, something just unbelievable happened. I don't know that people who haven't lived this will be able to grasp it without hearing it straight from you. So what happened when you were 14?
One day, me and my sister and my best friend were all sitting on the porch. And I went in the house to go upstairs. And the back door must have been unlocked. So I guess the people across the street, my neighbors, seen me go in the house and go upstairs. So two of my neighbors came through the back door, and I was in my mother's room. I forgot what I was doing. They both grabbed me, and one of them started choking me, and they were ripping my clothes off, trying to rape me. And I was screaming and hollering, but my sister and best friend didn't know what was going on, so they didn't even come in the house.
You're 14?
14.
Your sisters are how old, roughly?
My sister would have been 11.
Okay.
So she was 11, and then I was just sitting and I was screaming, and I was praying to God that I could get her loose. And somehow I was able to get away, and I flipped off the bed, and she didn't have wood planks on her bed, she had a metal rail. So when I flipped off the bed, I cut my hip, and it was a 5-inch gash that was probably an inch deep.
Do you remember how many stitches it took?
13 stitches.
13 stitches, 14-year-old girl, okay.
So I get up and I run down the stairs, and I knew how my mother was, so I was not even going to tell her. But when I went to tell her on the porch, I felt something cold on my rear end, and I bent over, and my friend girl was like, "Oh my gosh, your butt is cut open." So I started screaming. My mother was across the street smoking crack at her parents' house, because her parents were addicted to drugs too. And I started crying when I seen her. So then she calls the police. We called the police out. I had to go to the police department by myself. I get in the ambulance and go to the hospital by myself to get a rape kit. The most degrading, humiliating thing ever. And I had to do it all by myself.
So you're 14. You're in the hospital, ED, emergency department. You have to have a rape kit run. How would you say now that made you feel?
It was just like, I was in shock, because you never think anything would happen like that, and then you think that your parent would be there with you, and I was just there by myself. So
you go in on the ambulance?
Yes.
Okay, so you're there. Then what unfolded after that?
So I went back to the house, and one of the neighborhood drug dealers that was real good friends with my mother told her that you need to get her to drop the charges, and I'm going to give you an 8-ball of crack cocaine. And so my mother came to me and told me, "You are going to have to go down to the police department and tell me you fabricated the whole story." And I had to go down there to the police department and try to lie and say none of this happened. So once I went and did that, the police dropped me back off at the house, and there was nothing said about it. And then 2 weeks later, she was talking to one of our neighbors, and they were like, "You could get you a check off of her. You should put her in a psychiatric facility." So she was trying to get me put in a psychiatric facility and trying to get my sisters to make up stories about stuff that I did to them to help her keep me put in a psychiatric facility.
So you got, in the course of a couple of weeks, you're raped. Almost raped. By
people I had known for a long time.
So, okay. Older than you? Much older. Adults?
Yes.
Okay. So you're assaulted sexually. You go to the hospital alone. They release you back to, what adult did they release you back to?
To my mother.
To your mother. You get home, and in the process of all this unfolding, your mother realizes she can get an 8-ball. And for those people out there who don't know what an 8-ball is, why don't you tell them?
It's crack cocaine. It's like $300 worth of crack cocaine.
Right. So for $300, and that was the number I was trying to get to. It was $300 worth of crack. You get your daughter to lie and say she made all this up. She was just making out. It got out of hand, and you got to go lie. Essentially, perjure yourself.
Yes.
Just for her to get cocaine.
Yes.
And then it gets deeper because somebody says, "Hey, if your daughter has a special mental need, you can get some sort of small subsidy check. Why don't you get that happen? When you make that happen, get her admitted to a hospital, then you got this check."
Yes.
And your mom tried to do that.
She didn't go through with it, but
Right.
she discussed it.
She discussed it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because my mother, she never treated me like my other sisters. Because I'm more my father's complexion, and if you don't know, in the black family, colorism is a big thing.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah. So I was treated like my sisters are my mother's complexion. I'm my daddy's complexion, and I act like my daddy, and then I don't think she liked my father, so I was always treated differently.
Did you and your sisters have the same father?
Me and my sister under me, we have the same father, but my baby sister, she doesn't.
So your complexion is lighter and your mom's is darker.
Yes.
And there was colorism going on right
Yes.
there. Boy, that's another topic for another whole day. We need to just wait on that because we'll get sidetracked. But I want to talk about that, but I need to set parameters with you and what you're comfortable with off air. That's something that I don't know that if you're not a person of color, I don't think you can understand it. I am not a person of color, so we'll talk about that, maybe redo that at some point. Now, the reason I opened with that story is this. At the end of our last podcast, Johnsie made the statement that the real trouble started when she moved into a relationship that led to marriage. The real trouble started, yet at 14, you were essentially raped, assaulted, whatever word is the best word there. By comparison, what could be worse? But it sounds like it was. What happened as your life unfolded with 2 children now? You're 17, 18 years old, 19, and you're moving toward a relationship that turns into marriage. What happened?
Well, my husband, I ended up getting an apartment when I was 18. I moved out with my 2 children into Section 8 housing. So I had my own apartment, and my husband would always get missing all the time, and I was very naive. And I was like, where is he at? Where is he going? So later on, I found out he was addicted to crack cocaine. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'm with the thing that I hate the most, because I hate drug addiction.
So you've left a drug addicted situation, and now you're living with or married to another addicted person.
Yes.
Okay.
And it really didn't get bad until we got put out. We got put out of an apartment where I stayed at. So we ended up moving somewhere that was like $700 a month. And you have to think about this. This is like 1996. $700 a month in 1996 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we moved into this apartment. It was really bad. He would get missing all the time. He was very abusive. Very abusive.
Physically or emotionally or both?
Physically, emotionally, everything.
Okay.
And it was just like he would go to work and he would get missing. I couldn't drive. I didn't know how to drive, so I had to depend on him for everything.
Did he want it that way?
I think in the beginning he did.
To control.
Because that controls me and it gives him more independence.
Right.
And then I got pregnant with 3 years after I got pregnant with my son. And my son, once I got pregnant with him, I told him, he's like, oh, okay. And that was our 3rd child. And then we ended up getting put out of that apartment because he would always mess up the money. We were so far behind in rent. It was ridiculous. We would be like $1,000 or $2,000 behind in rent. Yeah. So then
you mentioned the $700. Before that, you were living in subsidized housing, which wasn't as expensive.
No,
right?
It was like $200 a month.
Right.
So that was a big jump going out into the world, being like that. And then he used to put his hands on me all the time. He used to hit me in front of my children. I remember one day he grabbed me by my hair and pulled me out on the cement and left me out there and locked me out of the house and wouldn't let me in. Then we were coming from Bessemer City one day and he got mad, threw me out of the car, I didn't have any shoes on, and I had to walk all the way to Kings Mountain.
So we're talking 6, 8, 9 miles, somewhere in that, depending
yes.
that you had to walk. I know the answer to this from talking with people and asking this question and hearing them answer it, but I don't know how to articulate it through your lens. But the question that comes up all the time is, why didn't you just leave? What do you say to that?
When you're financially dependent on somebody, because he was older than me and he could get different types of jobs than I could get. When you're financially dependent on somebody, you have 3 children, it's not that easy to get up and leave.
Right.
Most women in abusive relationships don't leave because of the financial support. It would be hard for me to go out with 3 children. I only have a high school diploma, find an apartment, be able to pay for it, and this is what I had been accustomed to for so many years.
And how many years did it take you to disentangle from that, or what happened? What's the progression?
It was a lot. We ended up buying a double wide together. My grandfather gave me some land, ended up buying a double wide, and it just got worse. I'm talking about it was just worse. He was always doing drugs. He was always stealing from me. And one thing I can remember, I let my mother move in with me. The one and only time I did. I was at work working at Polygram 12 hours. My sister called me and said, you need to come home. I get to the house. Him and my mother had stole all of my electronics out of my house.
So your husband and your mother have stolen your stereo, your DVD, all that different.
Stole everything.
Everything. Cleaned you out.
Yeah. So I come home. They left my son, my son was 6 months old. Left him in the house by himself. And my daughters were probably 4 and 3. Walked up the road to tell my sister that their baby brother was left at home by themselves. So I come home and everything's gone. The kids didn't understand what's going on, so I tried to make it where they didn't understand what was going on.
Right.
So I know I got off work. I found which drug dealer they had took the stuff to, and I told him, I said, you have 30 minutes to get my stuff back to the house, or I'll call the police. So I got most of my stuff back, but I didn't get the DVD the VCR, because that's how long ago it was, VCR and stuff back.
So the currency of the drug world then was things they could steal.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like they were using so frequently that they didn't even have to turn it into cash by pawning it. They just took it straight to the drug dealer and let him cut out the middleman.
Yes.
Right. So you got an addicted mother who, to this day, we understand is still struggling with addiction. You have an addicted husband who is violently abusive.
Yes.
Toward your children too.
No, he never whooped the children.
But they saw it,
yes.
Obviously. So you got that going on. What else unfolded? Because it sounds like, as I know the story, there's some pretty big things that happened over the next few years.
Yes, and then we never got to stay anywhere more than a year. We ended up losing the double wide. We moved to Shelby. It was horrible. I didn't have any transportation. He would leave me up there for weeks on end with no transportation, no food in the house. So then we ended up moving back to Kings Mountain. And when we moved back to Kings Mountain, that's when the drug dealing came into the picture.
So here's the picture. Shelby and Kings Mountain are in the same county, but it's a very rural county.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in a rural area, no transportation, no children, 3 children.
Mm-hmm. 4 children by that time.
4 children by that time. And you moved back to Kings Mountain, which is rural, but not as remote as Shelby would have been.
Yes, we were way out Shelby.
Yeah. And he starts dealing out of your home.
Yes.
So what transpired?
Well, with that, it was he would sell drugs and leave, take my car, leave. He would steal the car in the middle of the night if I was asleep. I had people, he stole somebody's car at work, took it one time, and I had to get up in the middle of the night and go find him. And he was at the drug house.
So he stole a third party person.
Yeah. He went and told him that somebody broke into his house and he needed to go home. So he took their car. The man's calling me at 1 o'clock in the morning time he needed his car. So I'm getting up, going to different drug dealers' houses in the middle of the night to find the car. So it's just a lot of stuff. So then when he took my car one day, and when he come back, I wanted to get up and leave and drive my car.
Yeah.
And then I get pulled over. So it's drugs in the car. So I told him, I said, you're going to come up here and tell them these people this is your drugs. He was like, no, he was not.
So you're stopped. You're how old now? 22?
No, I'm probably in my 30s.
So okay, so you've been married a little longer than I thought.
Yes.
So things are moving.
Mm-hmm.
Your children are now
High school, middle school.
High school, middle school. When you get stopped for what, brake light, tail light?
No, it was expired registration.
Expired registration, okay. Your children with you or you alone?
Alone.
You're alone. What happens?
Well, they was like, the cops in Kings Mountain knew my husband.
Right.
Because they knew he was on drugs. So once they stopped me, I was like, well, Marty was the last one driving. And he was like, he didn't have any license, so he was not coming up there to take it. So I ended up having to take the charges. I have nothing on my criminal background, but those charges, I only have a speeding ticket.
So you've never had a speeding ticket. In all the abuse that went on, all the things that happened, you were never charged, never arrested before.
Mm-mm.
You get stopped. How much drugs were in the car? Was it a felony level?
Oh yeah, all of them are. Yeah, they were all felonies.
So marijuana, cocaine,
crack cocaine.
Your husband won't come take the charges because not only that would mean manning up, and he's not going to do that. We know that because he hits people.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know him, but that's my opinion. He doesn't have a license,
No.
so that's another challenge. And there's no insurance on the car.
No.
So were you locked up?
Yes.
You're locked up.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of bail? You remember?
$40,000 bail.
Would you have had a better chance of jumping out this window and flying than to come up with a $40,000 bail
Yes.
at that point? How long did you have to sit in?
4 days.
4 days.
My sister was dating a bail bondsman.
Okay.
So he got me out for like half. It's $4,000. The bond is 10%.
Right.
So you need $4,000. He got me out for $1,800.
And how'd you come up with that money on the spot?
My sister did something.
Your sister.
My baby sister went, and I think she did a car title loan to get me out of jail.
Okay, to get you out of jail. So now you say, okay, big deal. Well, let's talk about a car title loan. The interest rate's, you serious?
180%.
180%. Say that again. The interest rate's 180%.
And it acquires daily.
It acquires daily. So you pay it off somehow.
Yes.
If you can. If not, you lose another car.
Mm-hmm.
Your other car is impounded. You got to get insurance to get it out, right?
Yes.
Because you can't even take it out of the impound.
No.
So it's impounded. You need several $100s to get insurance. And you got to pay storage fee.
Yes.
So all this is going on. Where were your kids during this time?
Well, my kids were at home with him, and he was just like, my daughter come home from school, and he's like, your mother's in jail. And my daughter was crying and screaming, and he had got paid that day, and because he was working, and he just left the kids there all weekend long. He was out getting high while I was in jail.
So you're in jail. He's continuing to use, neglecting your children.
Mm-hmm.
You get what are you charged with?
Possession with intent to sell and distribute.
And a felony
possession.
level.
Yes.
First time you've ever been arrested.
Yes.
Had you ever been stopped for a traffic violation? And
Like a minor's traffic violation, like an expired registration or a tag light or something like that.
So no previous charges. What transpired? What ended up happening?
Well, a good thing it was around tax time, so I was able to get a paid attorney. So I ended up getting a good attorney from Cleveland County. I pled guilty to the charges because people know you don't take it to court because no matter what, it was in my possession. The car is in my name. So I ended up pleading guilty.
Forget the fact that you didn't know it was there. Mm-hmm. Forget the fact that it belonged to your husband. You've never used drugs in your life.
Never.
Never. And I believe that because I know Johnsie. But yet you've got to plead guilty to this felony.
Yes.
You couldn't get it reduced to a misdemeanor.
No. Any possession of any drug is a felony.
Right.
It could be a crime. It's a felony.
It's a felony. That's right.
Yeah.
So you plead guilty. What happens?
I did. The judge gave me 90 days work release in Gaston County, but I was sentenced out of Cleveland County, so I had to pay $56 a week. I was working at a bed and breakfast in Grover, North Carolina, and I was only making $100 to $200 a week.
So you're making $150 a week net. Bring home. You got to pay $56 a week, and that's going to.
Oh no, $36 a day.
Well, $36 a day
to do work release.
To do work release.
So that's $254 a week I had to come up with.
So where did you sleep at night?
In jail.
In jail.
I was out for 12 hours a day. I could go to work, and the great thing is the man that I worked for made it where I could come down there and stay even if I wasn't on the clock. So I would be out for 12 hours. Even if I only worked 5 hours, he would let me stay down there the rest of the time. Okay. So I wouldn't have to go back into jail.
So you had a gracious employer, obviously. Yes. So you're working on work release. Do you remember what your hourly rate was?
I already had my work release. I had my job.
You had your job before.
Yes.
Do you remember what your hourly rate was?
I think he was paying us $8.50 an hour.
So you're making $8.50 an hour at the time, which is, if you work 10 hours, is $80, $85. But you're working how many hours a day?
5 or 6.
5 or 6 hours a day, and 36 of that is automatically after tax and everything. Then 36 is going back to the work release program. So you did 90 days in which facility?
Gaston County Annex.
Okay, so you're 90 days in at the Gaston County Annex, and then you're free, or what happens?
No, I had other charges. That lady, it was another set of charges, so I had to. How it was, I had 40 more days, but I went to my probation office and I told her my husband is really messing up. I said, I think social service is going to end up taking my kids. I said, I cannot afford to do this anymore because I was trying to keep a roof over my kids' head at home so they wouldn't get put out and feed them so they wouldn't get put out. So the judge ended up letting me do the rest of my time in Cleveland County on weekends. So for 4 months straight, I had to go to jail every weekend.
So for 4 months, you go to jail every weekend, you're incarcerated, you're working during the week.
Yes.
Your children are with is this their biological father or their stepfather?
Biological father.
So he has control.
He left then. He moved out then and he didn't watch them. So it was practically my children were watching themselves. But my daughter was 16 or 17, so she was watching the children.
Right.
Every weekend when I went in.
So we're down to that point. You've done 90 days, and now you're doing your other. What were the other charges for people who are out there going, "Oh, I knew it. There's more charges." What were the other
charges? Charges, the same charges. It was like because I don't know how they did it, but it was the same charges. They brought some more up.
Okay.
Yeah. So and that's why I had to set this up.
So there wasn't another infraction.
No.
There was one event.
Yes.
This is how it got pled out.
Yes. Okay. Because it was Cleveland County and Kings Mountain. So Kings Mountain picked up some of it, and Cleveland County picked it up.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
So, and that's another topic for another day. And you feel like you had an advantage because you were able to hire a good attorney out of your tax return.
Yes.
And
if you don't get a paid attorney, it's no good.
Alexander, in her book, The New Jim Crow, makes it pretty clear. If you watch the Netflix documentary 13, it's also in there. So I think it's where I saw it. The typical public appointed defender spends 12 minutes with their client. You can't defend somebody with 12 minutes experience. The system's flawed, it's broken.
Yes, it is.
And that's, again, another topic for another day. So you spent a total of 90 days and then 4 months working weekends or being incarcerated on the weekends.
Yes.
Tell us about when you finished that. What happened?
When I finished that, I was still working at the bed and breakfast when I came out. Working at the bed and breakfast, and then I decided I wanted to go to college. So me and my husband were still together. So then I signed up for Gaston College. I ended up going for 3 years. I got a degree in developmental disabilities. I got a degree in human services. As soon as I graduated, I got a job because I didn't work the whole time that I was going to school. And I ended up getting a job at A&E, and it was a decent paying job. Then I got blessed, and they called me for another job at another plant that was paying $4 more an hour.
Wow, that's a big jump.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And then I got a call for a shelter, a local shelter that works with children. I ended up getting employed there.
So talk about that a minute. You're a convicted felon. That's your status. You're not that. That's another topic. But you have a felony. How do you get these jobs? How hard has it been?
Well, I don't know. For me, I think it was the Lord's. It was a blessing because my charges are from 2012. Will be my sentencing date, but they didn't used to have felons at the job that I work in Kings Mountain, but somehow I ended up getting a job. I told them, I said, I have stuff in my criminal background. I have a felon in my criminal background. and I still was able to get the job. And even at the shelter that I work with children, I was still able to get that job. Now, some people, it's hard for them to get jobs. But I think when you're a woman, it kind of, like if you're a man, you have a felony, I think people look at you differently. But if you're a woman, I think they're a little bit more lenient.
And you are in a job market. How long have you been on the 2 jobs you have now?
I've been at the one job for a year. This month is my year. And the other job, I've been there almost a year.
So you entered these jobs at a time when the job market is so hot because people need employees that they may have made exceptions too for that. We don't know.
Yeah.
But I hear that from a lot of employers now. What about before you got these jobs? What were some of the hurdles that having that on your record either prevented you from trying to do or actually stopped you from doing?
Well, when I was in college and I tried to get an internship at the Salvation Army wouldn't give me an internship. And that's how I met you.
Yeah.
Because I talked to my professor, and she was like, you should try the Gateway.
Right.
Because they're more lenient, and I think they're more understanding.
Right.
So that's how me and you came to meet each other.
And I had forgotten that, and the Salvation Army is a great organization, but they have policies just like any other organization.
Yes.
So, how did it affect you with other jobs? Like if you wanted to get a simple job, working in a convenience store, something like that, did it come up ever?
No, exactly. Well, the whole time I worked was in school, I didn't look for employment.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you were able to live off other ways.
Yes. I had somebody that was taking care of me.
Right.
So they told me they didn't want me working while I was in school.
Right. Which is a rare thing.
Yeah, it is.
Usually you don't have that advantage.
I know.
So you're out. What we could spend days talking about this, but why don't we move it to a landing with this? What are the things, or the people, or the places, or the events, whatever? What has made the difference? You could have been a statistic.
Yes.
You could have been a statistic. You have healthy relationships with your children.
Yeah, all my children are doing great.
I see them in your posts on Facebook. It's evident you love them. They love you. You're divorced from this abusive husband.
Yes.
That's probably another podcast for people to learn about how to escape those situations with some hope. But in putting this thing together today, what made the turn for you? What are the differences for Johnsie that other people can look at and go, that can happen for me, that can happen?
Well, for me to finally leave my husband, we've been doing this for 20-some years, on and off. Him doing drugs, then telling me he don't want to do drugs, and then doing drugs and going to rehabs. And I just got tired of it. So I remember one day he was like, can you take me to Shelby? I need to go take a drug test for this job. And I was like, this just don't sound right, because when you have to take a drug test, you have to go there at night.
Right.
So something said, Johnsie, get up and go in the office. I go in the office, he was going to order a new pay card. Because he had gave me his pay card so I could pay the bills out of it. And I said, this is enough. I left him there, went home, packed his stuff up, took it over to his aunt's house and left him.
So that was the end of that?
That was the end.
And there was no abuse after that?
No, because I put him out.
You put him out?
He couldn't come back. Now, I did help get him in a rehab down in Charlotte. Because I have that caring heart. No matter how bad he treated me, I'm going to still look out for you, regardless. Right. Because that blocks my blessings. So he needed somewhere to stay one night. I let him come in there and sleep in one of the extra bedroom. And then I got up and took him to Charlotte to get back in the rehab.
And there's a lesson there that is so subtle. Is it fair to say to women out there, or men who are facing an abuse situation, if you can stay out of the bedroom, it sets a clear boundary, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And you did that.
Yes.
I can't sit here and preach to somebody about that because I've not lived it, but you have.
Yeah, we were separated. We were living in the same house, but we didn't sleep in the same room for 2 years.
But you made a decision that there's a line I'm not crossing, and you did that.
Mm-hmm.
That's noble, and you can speak to that. What would you say to that woman who says, well, maybe I can make this work. Maybe if we try this, maybe if we have another child, it'll change. Maybe what would you say to that person?
After 20 years of being homeless, we lived in a house for 3 months with no power. We had to keep our food in a cooler with ice in it, and I had 4 small children. After him leaving us in a motel to run off and kick the back door in to steal the microwave to sell it. After all of that, and me going to NA meetings with him, me trying to help him, me picking his check up, paying all the bills, it comes a point where you just have to be tired and done with it. Because he had been clean, and that last time that he tried that with changing the pay card, that was the breaking point for me. I was like, I can't keep doing this. Some people will hold you back, and he was holding me back.
And you were together how many years?
23 years.
23 years. That's a long time.
Yes.
And this is the father of your children.
Yes.
So it's not just like you were roommates. You were soul partners.
Mm-hmm.
You tried to be.
Yeah.
So what made that turn? I know that you came to a point where you said, I've had enough. I'm fed up with being fed up. What made the turn for you? What were the interventions in your life that said, okay, these are the steps I'm going to take. These are the supports.
I really didn't have any steps. I just knew I was tired of it. And I was just like, I can't keep living like this because it's just holding me back. Because since he's been gone, I've been able to go to school and graduate with my degrees.
And you're back in school now working on another degree.
Yeah, I'm working on my bachelor's degree for human services.
And you already have 2 or 3 degrees?
2 degrees.
2 degrees.
Yes.
And in my internship experience, did phenomenal work. I don't know academically where you are. It's been a while, but the work product, you could tell there was a work ethic there, and a maturation. And now I know a little more. It came some from having a parent at 10 years old. Mm-hmm. Not because you had a child, because you had younger siblings.
Yes.
If you were to say to somebody out there who's listening to this and is stuck in one of these cycles of addicted families, addicted parents, addicted spouse, an abusive partner, what would you say from your own life that you could hold up and they could look at right now and say, here's some hope?
Well, with the parents that are being drug addicted, don't ever blame yourself for their drug addiction. Yeah. That's a demon that they're fighting with inside themselves. And don't follow in the same footsteps. Because with my husband, his father was addicted to crack cocaine. And he started smoking marijuana, and it led up to him being addicted to crack cocaine. So don't follow the same footsteps as your parents. Stay away from that. Yeah. And an abusive relationship, it might be hard in the beginning, but you will be able to make it. It might be hard to go out on your own, but like I tell people, the things that I went through made me the person I am today. Yeah. Because I don't think if I went through all that, I wouldn't have a story to tell, and I wouldn't be as driven as I am to do the things that I want to do.
What role has your faith played in this?
A big role. Because going to jail, being away from my kids for the first time ever, that was a lot. And leaving my kids every weekend for 4 months straight, it's mentally and emotionally draining.
And you left them with him?
Yes, until he moved out.
And then you had to depend on sisters and family.
Yes.
Yeah. And we didn't spend any time talking about your time incarcerated. What do you take away from those months of your life? What do you say, these are the things that I've learned through that?
Well, my 90 days, and this might sound crazy, but the 90 days that I was in Gaston County, it made me focus more on myself. I knew I had my children I had to take care of, but it made me find the strength in myself. And because when I came home, I put him out after when I came home. But then my son wanted me to let him come back, so that's how he ended up moving back in. But I found my strength while I was gone. I realized that I can do this by myself because I was doing this time by myself.
Right. So, Johnsie, your story is amazing. There are people out there I know who are going to hear this, and they're going to realize somebody else did it, and you're doing it. You're working on another degree. I know that you're in a good job. You're doing a good human service job. I think there are great things ahead for you. We'll stay plugged in, and if you want to continue, just come back, resourceconnectiongateway.com, and learn more about Johnsie's story as we unfold. But my heart is full because I get to call you my friend, and I'm thankful that happened. I'm thankful that the college thought to reach out to us and make that connection. And now I hope hundreds and hundreds of people are going to learn more about your story. So thank you very much for sharing.
You're welcome.
All right.
This podcast brought to you by Resource Connection Gateway. You can find more information at resourceconnectiongateway.com. This has been part 2 of the Johnsie Adams story, and this has been a production of resourceconnectiongateway.com. Let the Resource Connection Gateway help.